Hey guys, Tom Barclay here, just making my way back from the Tottenham Hotspur training ground where I've just done the pre-Tamworth press conference, Ange Postecoglou's press conference. It's absolutely freezing right now in England, sub-zero temperatures, where I imagine and it'll be the same when it comes to the game on Sunday, albeit it's a 12:30 kickoff, so maybe a little bit warmer, but yeah, it's been really cold today. I imagine it will affect the players, so have some sympathy for us wherever you're watching in the world. And I've got quite a few people in Australia who watch this, and India as well, where I presume it's a lot warmer. But yeah, cold right now in England, but what do you expect in January? And the players will be well used to it, no doubt. Just before we get into Ange's comments about Tamworth going forward, I think the first place to start is a positive update on Rodrigo Bentancur. So you'll have seen, obviously, in the Liverpool game, in the 6th minute, he goes, sort of stoops for a header, unchallenged, at a corner, and goes down in quite worrying scenes, really. Hits the deck, is down for about 8 minutes, appears to be knocked out, eventually is taken off on a stretcher with having oxygen administered. And then later that night he gave an update from hospital, I think it was. We was having checks with a thumbs up picture and saying he was all good. And then Ange today has given a further update on him. He's confirmed it was concussion that the Uruguayan suffered. He didn't explain exactly how it happened, but my understanding is, because when you see the pictures, there's a lot of sort of question marks over what happened exactly, but Tottenham's understanding is that he's hit the ground, he's hit his head, and that's knocked him out, basically, and that's nothing more than that. He's had all these checks, neurological checks and everything, and nothing is, it's flagged up, everything's fine. He's just got concussion. Ange said that it will be a couple of weeks before he plays again. What I'm led to believe from Tottenham is it's effectively 12 days he wouldn't be allowed to play another match. Sometimes when players get concussed, they can be back within a week, effectively, and we saw that with Rodrigo Bentancur the first game of the season when he got knocked out at Leicester and was back playing against Newcastle and only missed the one game against Everton. But because of that, because he's already had it this season, he is having to sort of do the full 12 days, which, if you work out the timeline, means he's probably back for the Hoffenheim game in Europa League on Thursday, January the 23rd. That would be a sort of obvious match for him to come back in, although the only thing I'll say is, in Ange's press conference, twice he reiterated the point that sort of regardless of the protocol of how long he's supposed to be out for, they will give him as long as he needs. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he will come back straight away when sort of time is up. I wouldn't be surprised if he did miss that game against Hoffenheim. We'll see. But overall, positive news, given how sort of worrying those scenes looked when he had that incident. So on to Tamworth itself, and let's be honest, a game that is really just a potential banana skin for Spurs. There isn't really any sort of PR upside. Obviously, the big upside of getting through to the next round, and the cup competitions are proving to be the saving grace for Spurs this season, and a chance to sort of build on that excellent result and performance against Liverpool. But let's be honest, all the fans who aren't Tottenham fans out there, we're going to be, licking their lips over a potential cup set, as we call them, over here. Tamworth, who are, I believe, 96 places below Spurs in the football pyramid. They're National League. They're actually, higher up than you probably expect when you look at their facilities, which are pretty rudimentary. A 3G pitch that's not in great shape, very small capacity ground. I think I'm actually not going to be at the game, so there won't be a post-match video from me after that game. I'm doing Crystal Palace instead, but that almost speaks to the fact that they don't really have a lot of space for media. Only one journalist per paper, I think, going, and we've got a guy who actually lives in Tamworth, so he'll be covering it instead. But they've got a porter cabin where they're hoping, I think I read that they're putting on pie and chips for Daniel Levy and his other sort of Tottenham bigwigs, I suppose you could put it. This is a team with players who are probably playing in the absolute game of their lives. And on that point, sort of, if they go and win sort of 8-0, there won't be really much credit from that, because what are they expected to do to Tottenham? They're expected to win this game. They can only, like I said, everyone, the world and his wife's going to be wanting them to lose for what a great story it would be to see sort of little Tamworth beat Tottenham. And Ange, on that front, he was asked if the attitude needs to be spot on with his players because of that risk, and he said absolutely. he said that he, many times throughout his career, which has obviously been quite a unorthodox, route to the top compared to your average football manager, where he's been to, manage various teams in Australia and Japan, less so at Celtic. The point that I'm about to explain that he made is basically he's often been the underdog, international football as well, at Australia, I suppose. So he knows what it's like, and he would, I presume, he'd never want to be disrespected from another sort of manager talking down towards his team, and he's definitely not going to do the same when it comes to speaking about Tamworth. He'll respect them, give them respect they deserve. They obviously, as I mentioned, play on a 3G pitch, plastic pitch effectively. Spurs have their own one at the training ground, which was actually recently relayed. The plan, Postecoglou said, was to train on that on Saturday, the day before the game, to get themselves sort of prepared for that. And on that note, it's interesting when it comes to team selection, which I'll come on to. Some of the younger players in the squad, the likes of Will Lancashire, Mikey Moore, obviously, Alfie Dorrington, the players who've played academy football mostly and quite recently may actually be in a slightly better position than your average player to deal with those pitches, because a lot of the games they've played on in academy football will have been those pitches. So maybe we'll come on to who he's going to play, but maybe that for them it might be less of an adaptation than it might be for some of the other players. And for example, Richarlison, who's back in training, Ange said last week that he wanted to see a good 2-4 weeks of training from Richarlison before he starts, making him ready to play in a game. And he was earmarking the Arsenal game, but that makes a lot of sense given the injuries and the re-injuries he's suffered of pretty much since he's been at Tottenham. But also, you wouldn't be going to throw him in on a pitch like this for a player who's had such injury problems. So not surprising that he won't be available for this game. And in fact, no one's back who was out before, apart from James Maddison and Pape Sarr, who was suspended against Liverpool. So a welcome return for both of them. Ange was asked, he himself may be ready for this kind of challenge of sort of, as I say, kind of basic facilities compared to what their players are used to, but effectively his multi-million pound players and their sort of pampered, mollycoddled ways, will they be ready for it? And he basically said they're not those, they are human beings. They have been in these positions before, a lot of them have come from it, in their journey to the top, not been sort of had the glamour of their lifestyles now for the whole of their lives. They will be used to it. They will show respect towards their opposition, and be well aware that Tamworth a lot of their players will be playing effectively in the biggest game they'll have ever played in, and will probably look to raise their game as a result. They'll be more up for this than your average team. And while Spurs, yes, will have better technical quality and experience and probably fitness, when it comes to that sort of, this is me speaking rather than Ange here, when it comes to that grit and determination that the Tamworth players may show from being in the game of their lives effectively, Tottenham are going to have to match that. And Ange sort of hinted at sort of the lack of complacency, or the fact that his team aren't going to have to be complacent, or they will be punished if they don't. And on that front, when it comes to team selection, he was asked whether this was a chance to give some of the youngsters a go, and his answer was kind of classically Ange sort of contrarian, was no. He's going to pick a team that he thinks is going to win. But then he did go on to explain that he did feel like maybe this was a chance to rest a couple of players. He was asked specifically about Will Lancashire, Alfie Dorrington. On Dorrington, he said he actually hinted that he'll probably send him out on loan this month, so watch out for that. He's a player who made his debut at Southampton, but really hasn't featured much, the 19-year-old, bearing in mind the injury crisis that Ange has had at centre-back. So I don't think he'll probably throw him in from the off in this game, but we'll wait and see. Lancashire's a bit of a different one, because he might think that Solanke is definitely due a rest shortly, and I'll come on to that. So maybe he might start him, and he has done him started before against Galatasaray, where he scored. I know he was also sent off, but he did score, so maybe there's a chance there. He did mention Mikey Moore. He thought it was important for him. Moore is obviously the one that he's is involved the most and the most highly rated of the lot. He said that it's important actually that he gets some action, so I'd expect him to be involved, maybe not from the off after his virus, which has kept him out for weeks now. But he was saying he was mindful that this game doesn't turn into be a tricky match. It might be a tricky match from the off anyway, but I guess if you go in with a team selection that doesn't maybe give the full respect of the team, and it gets Tamworth sort of tails up, and suddenly they concede, Spurs concede a silly goal or something, suddenly you're looking at a real, banana skin, as I put it. So I don't get a sense that Ange is going to make too many changes or give too many youngsters, inexperienced players chances just because it's a team way down in the football pyramid. He did suggest, I haven't got the exact quotes, but he did basically hint that Reguilón might feature. He's a player that hasn't really featured much this season, but in recent weeks, because of Udogie's injury, has come back into the fold. I think a lot of people expected him to be gone from the club by now, but he's still here, and he's now been involved a bit of late, and I imagine I wouldn't be surprised if he started. On Reguilón, I don't think it's out of the question that he still leaves the club in January. I think if the club got an offer, bear in mind he's got 6 months left on his contract, they're not looking to renew it, they would probably cash in, even with the sort of situation they're in. But they've had no offers as yet, so I'm told, and I think it'd probably be more likely at this stage that he's, I don't know, beyond the window. I'm not going to say that actually, because things can happen towards the end of the window. But at the moment, it's fair to say that he is involved. Ange has brought him back into the fold and is using him, and I expect him to at Tamworth. Obviously, Sarr and Maddison are back, so we'll come on to team selection in a minute. But just before we do that, finally, a word on Rally Dragusin. He was asked by my good friend George Sessions about Dragusin, who has played pretty much every game since that Man City game, with all in the cup, with all the injuries that Ange has had to deal with. He's always featured in all those games anyway, and the question was basically like, he's only 22. I think because he's such a powerful, sort of older looking player, you sort of overlook how young he is, and the fact that he's only not even been here a year yet, in a different country, a different culture, a different style of football. He's still adapting, and he's young, as I said, particularly for a centre-back. And maybe when people, including myself, I've been critical of him, and I still, to a certain extent, feel not completely convinced that his biggest strengths play to Ange's biggest strengths. But I can also see that, particularly when you're playing against tougher opposition like City or Liverpool, he's actually quite useful as a backs against the wall kind of player. And I neglected to mention after the Liverpool game that he played a key role in not only his performance overall, but that clearance off the line in the second half was fundamental to Liverpool, to Spurs getting a win there. And Ange was praiseworthy of Dragusin as well. And the point that he made was that it's been overlooked that he's played with now his fourth goalkeeper. He's played with a 18-year-old at centre-back who's not a centre-back. He's played with a multitude of full-backs. So this is a guy who's not slotting in, a youngster, let's be honest, 22, slotting into a fully functioning, well-oiled machine with a bunch of senior pros, particularly at the back. He has basically become the senior pro in that team, in that back line, along with Porro, I suppose. So it's not easy, and he praised him for it, and fair enough, I'd say, on that point. And he talked, big buzzword of Ange's press conferences particularly during this period, has been about growth, and how as difficult as it will help in their growth as a team and as players long term. And he used that again when talking about Dragusin, who I believe is 18 games in a row now that he's played, or at least featured him, which shows you how much more he's involved. It feels like forever ago that there were stories about his lack of game time and whether he'd move on. I mean, my goodness, they've needed him during this period and will continue to do so, even when Van der Ven and Romero are back, because let's be honest, their injury record suggests that they will be out again at some point, so they're going to need Dragusin. So just finally on to team selection. So Tamworth, as mentioned by Ange, this is a side that he's not going to take lightly. He did hint he's going to rest a few, but it didn't look like he was going to make wholesale changes. I think Kinski will start in goal again. I reckon Spence might come at right back, and maybe Porro gets a rest. Dragusin and Gray, centre-backs. Don't expect Orrington to come in. And then I think Reguilón starts at left-back. Now, it's interesting at holding midfield. I wonder if Bergvall played so well against Liverpool, if he started on the bench to be prepared for Arsenal on Wednesday, rather than starting this game. But he's 18. He's only just sort of found his way into the team. Maybe he starts. I don't know. I think it's a bit of a toss of a coin. But you could argue he's ahead of Bissouma now in that pecking order, albeit Arsenal away. Maybe you need a Bissouma's style of play to come in there, a bit of combative midfield kind of player. But I don't know. I almost think maybe Bissouma and Maddison and Sarr start this game, and Bergvall starts against Arsenal. But we'll see on that one. That's one that I'm really not sure about. Then I think Johnson plays wide right. I think Sonny might start in the middle rather than Lancashire. I think Lancashire will feature, but maybe not right from the off, just based on what Ange was saying today. But it could be, again, a bit of a toss of a coin there. And I think Timo Werner comes back in on the left. So let me know what you think. Team selection. Let me know how worried you are about this game, and whether Tamworth can pull off a shock, or whether this is going to be this is a dream fixture for Spurs in a way, and can play another big role in a wonder, fascinating story that's we've had from Spurs this season. Has been difficult at times, very difficult, particularly in the league. But as we've seen from the League Cup, the cup competitions have been, as I said, the saving grace for Ange Postecoglou. Maybe this will be another one, and a big scores coming. We'll see. Let me know. And like I say, I won't be doing a video after the game, but I'm sure I'll speak to you again soon. Cheers, guys.